Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I am so excited tonight to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about sugar. We'll talk about how sugar affects us, why we crave it so much, and what you can do to curb those sugar cravings that might derail an otherwise healthy diet. So by the end of the program, you'll have a great idea of why we say that sugar has earned its place as the root cause of many of our painful symptoms and even chronic diseases today, and why we should be limiting the amount of added sugar that we consume and not necessarily all sugars. So I will be following this discussion. If you have any questions, I'll be following the Q&A box. Please feel free to add your questions in there. Hopefully I'll get to them as I'm speaking, but if not, I will get to them at the end of the program. I would love to be able to answer all of your questions that you have. I'm so excited also tonight to give you the details of my new cooking program, which will be starting at the end of January. And it is designed to limit the amount of sugar in your diet. How appropriate, right? What good timing. And many of you are already familiar with my programs, so you know how much fun they are to do. We do it as a group and how good we feel after the week is over. By the end of the program, I'm hoping everyone on this call tonight will want to join the group. The program includes an introductory Zoom call and then all of the materials that you will need to prepare all these delicious, simple to make recipes for the week. So hopefully you'll be able to join me, and we will be cooking then on that Sunday beforehand, preparing all the foods together. So just before we get started, I just wanted to give a little introduction as to who I am. I probably know most of you, but for those of you who are new to my programs, I am Evey Schweig, a holistic health coach and anti-inflammation expert. I guess I can't say it as well as I do it, right? But with a degree in biology and certified in integrative nutrition. So my journey to health began about probably 10 plus years ago when I was suffering from joint pain, foggy thinking, intense sugar cravings. And I went through my own research and switched to a nutritious anti-inflammatory diet, which helped me reduce my symptoms and made me so much happier. And I'm so happy to be able to share this now with others as well. Today, I work with clients using clinical food testing to identify triggers that might be causing their symptoms and design these curated programs that help reduce the symptoms of inflammation, such as digestive distress, joint pain, foggy thinking, as I said before, and low energy levels. I give my clients the tools they need to make confident food and lifestyle choices for a lifetime. Basically, they're aging younger. So, with that said, what I would like to do is set up a screen share. There we go. Okay. Bear with me a little bit if this is a little bit new for me. It's the first time that I'm actually doing this webinar format. But so thank you again for being here this evening. Today, again, I would like to give you some background information on one of the foods that is quite possibly the worst offender when it comes to our health, and that is processed sugars. Growing up, we heard that too much sugar can give you cavities, right? Well, we rarely heard of it relating to other health issues, but now we know that sugar is one of the leading causes of inflammation. Inflammation is what causes many of the aches and pains that we complain about as we're growing up, right? And we're still growing up. I mentioned them before, joint pain for one, but also digestive issues, bloating, skin rashes, even mood swings. And it's also responsible for weight gain. As we now know, chronic inflammation can affect every organ of our body, leading to conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. By reducing or eliminating added sugars, you will feel and see immediate results. So first of all, let's acknowledge that sugar has pros and cons. It's not all bad, right? After all, sugar is a major source of energy for our bodies. Our body gets its energy from the glucose molecule that's located in the sugar or makes up the sugar. Our cells need a constant supply of this glucose at all times to do their job properly. In particular, glucose is the main source of fuel for our brain. It helps the nerve cells process information, and without glucose, our brain wouldn't be able to function at all. So after we eat sugar, it is carried by our blood to the cells for fuel. And that's why we talk about blood sugar levels. I also wanted to make the connection between sugar and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are also a quick source of energy for the body. We can get energy from fats and proteins, but they're much more difficult for our body to process. Therefore, carbohydrates and sugars are the preferred energy source of the body, and that's why our body craves it so much. A carbohydrate is nothing more than a chain of sugar molecules. A simple carb can be easily broken down by the body. Lost my track here. Sugars are considered as a simple carb, for example. So there are other types of carbohydrates, though, and these are called complex carbohydrates. They are broken down differently by the body. They're broken down more slowly because their structure is more complicated, and they release their sugars a lot more slowly in the body. Complex carbs are found in foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, and whole grains. Now, if these carbs are refined, like our white flour or white rice, the bran and the fiber and nutrients have been removed, and the body treats these carbs more like sugar. So ideally, we want to be getting our food, our energy source, our fuel from these complex carbs and not necessarily from simple carbs. So here's an example of some of these simple carbs and refined carbs. They contain a lot of sugar and white flour, like I said before. Simple carbs, refined carbs. A refined carb is contains white flour, right? So white rice, as I said before, but it can also be found in pastries and snacks that are made up of these ingredients. Pasta is considered a refined carb. Sweets in particular have refined carbs in them. Breakfast cereals and crackers are also full of them. So we have to be really careful because it's found in most of our foods in the standard American diet. Because if it's a ready source of energy, our bodies seek it out and crave it, like I said. That's why we have so many sweets here, but too much is not good for us. And the amount of sugar we've been consuming has been increasing over the years. In the early 1800s, two important changes happened when it comes to sugar. One is the process for extracting sugar from sugar beets was developed. And the other is that it became more efficient to refine sugar. So sugar was more easily introduced. It became cheaper to introduce into the diet. And then around 1950, high fructose corn syrup was developed. And this was developed by modifying corn syrup to form a highly concentrated form of sugar. And you can see the effect that it had on this chart. So 200 years ago, the average American ate only 2 pounds of sugar per year. In 1970, we ate 123 pounds of sugar per year. Today, the average American consumes almost 152 pounds of sugar in 1 year. This is equal to 3 pounds, or about 6 cups of sugar consumed every week. That's a lot of sugar. We don't realize it because it's hidden. So let's take a little closer look at how much sugar we're actually eating per day. So due to more awareness, and this is a good thing, the average consumption of sugar has gone down. So we like that. And a lot of that is due to the average American being more educated. So now the average American consumes about 17 teaspoons of sugar per day, or added sugars per day, I should say. So that's down from the 42 teaspoons that were per day that was common right around 2000. Probably, again, as I said, to the rising public awareness of the danger of over-consuming sugary foods. The major culprits being sugary drinks and treats. So interestingly, too, and amazingly, the amount consumed by children has gone down too. And again, this has to do with education and the parents making a concerted effort to limit the amount of sugary snacks and treats that their children are eating. But it's really not enough of a reduction. 17 teaspoons is still 272 empty calories being consumed per day. And I say empty calories because it's just energy. It's not coming with nutrition, fiber, vitamins, minerals, and other things that our body needs. The American Heart Association, I'm thinking dental sugar, right? The American Heart Association recommends that men get 9 teaspoons, or about 150 calories of added sugar per day. For women, the number is lower, 16 teaspoons, or about 100 calories per day. So 17 teaspoons is still almost 3 times what the recommended amount is for women per day. So what is the danger of consuming too much sugar? Well, many of us do not have a lifestyle that requires the amount of sugar that we're consuming. And much of the energy from sugar or simple carbs we consume will go unused and be stored as fat. So this results, of course, in weight gain and less obvious effects, such as low mood or mood fluctuations, foggy thinking, acne, energy drain, and accelerated aging. Yes, it actually will accelerate us more quickly. So many of these symptoms are the result of a lesser known effect of too much sugar, and that is inflammation, something that I know a lot about. So let's take a quick look at what inflammation actually is. So there are 2 types of inflammation. One is acute inflammation, or short-term inflammation, and that is part of the body's natural healing process. During injury or infection, the body releases chemicals to help protect it or to fight off harmful organisms. This can cause redness, swelling, warmth, everything we're familiar with, right, when we sprain an ankle. So some foods like sugar can also cause inflammation in the body, which is normal. This inflammation is caused by the formation of free radicals, which are the natural byproduct of day-to-day cellular metabolism. All right, so it's normal for us to have some level of inflammatory agents in the body, but the body has a very natural way of neutralizing this inflammation, these free radicals, also known as oxidants, by producing anti-oxidants. They neutralize the inflammation and keep it at bay so that it doesn't run amok in our bodies. However, eating too many inflammatory foods like sugars overwhelms the body with the body's natural ability to keep and fight the damage and keep it at bay. It can't produce enough of these antioxidants to neutralize the inflammation. And that's when low-grade chronic inflammation takes place. And this low-grade chronic inflammation can cause the symptoms that I mentioned earlier, and you can see at the top of this slide, but also more serious health problems, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, allergies. So there are studies that support this information. And I just thought I would give you a few just to show you what kind of studies have been done. So human studies confirm that there's a link between inflammation and sugar consumption. So inflammatory markers are a good way for us to register whether inflammation is occurring in the body. And an inflammatory marker is a sign of body-wide inflammation that's measured in lab tests using blood samples. So in this particular study that I have on this slide, one study of 29 healthy people consuming 1 can of soda per day led to an increase in inflammatory markers. In this case, it's called C-reactive protein. Insulin resistance, raised the levels of what is considered bad cholesterol, the LDL, and they also tended to gain weight. In another study, refined carbohydrates were looked at in relation to inflammation. And in this case, eating just 50 grams of refined carbohydrates in the form of white bread. Remember I said white bread had those refined carbs because it has white flour in it, resulted in higher blood sugar levels. And an increase in the inflammatory marker, the NF-κB. So NF-κB plays a role in expressing those inflammatory cells. So a rise in it would indicate more inflammation. So in summary then, consuming too much sugar and refined carbs has been linked with elevated inflammation, insulin resistance, weight gain. All things that I'm sure you've heard about and we know are not good for our health. And as we go on, I'll explain that a little bit more completely. But let's take a closer look now at what happens in the body after sugar is consumed and enters the bloodstream. So sugar can really wreak havoc on our system. It's important to understand just what is going on when we consume sugars. After you eat glucose and glucose enters your bloodstream, your body creates something called insulin. Insulin is created and released by the pancreas. Insulin's job is to shuttle glucose to where it is needed and reduce the amount of glucose in the blood. I just got a question about how much bread is 50 grams. I'm assuming, I knew I should have measured this. I'm assuming that it is about 2 slices of bread. I will double check on that though and get back to let you know. So just to get back to our fluctuations of sugar, we now have our sugar causing insulin to be released. When this happens, our blood sugar levels naturally go down. So glucose will enter the blood system very rapidly, right? So if there is a lot of sugar in the blood, the body will see this. It will trigger the insulin. The insulin will be released, and then the insulin has a decision to make. Do we need all this energy? If so, it will go towards, the cells of the muscles or the cells of the brain to be utilized. But if not, what happens is the insulin signals this amount of glucose to be stored. So when that happens, our blood sugar levels literally tank. Okay, so they go down. And you've heard people having low blood sugar levels. What happens is when this happens, the body realizes that it needs energy, and the body knows how to get energy quickly. And that's by, you're right, eating sugar and processed carbs. So it's signaling a craving for that food. It wants to eat more sugar. It's a vicious cycle. So what we need to be doing in order to prevent this cycling going on is to be eating foods that are low in sugar throughout the day, so you don't have that excess sugar in the blood and then subsequent low blood sugar afterwards, which we like to call a sugar crash. But there's more to this than just having constant energy level, because long-term, this roller coaster effect of sugar highs and lows takes a toll on our bodies. Specifically, it triggers insulin resistance and inflammation. So you may have heard the term insulin resistance before. As I said earlier, it's the job of insulin to shuttle sugar to where it needs to be. Either it's needed or it's stored as fat. If we continually feed on a diet that's high in sugar and processed foods, over time, the insulin will start to become resistant. And what I mean by this, it no longer will function. It will not respond to the signals that it's getting. It won't help regulate those blood sugar levels. Basically, it's tired. It doesn't want to work anymore. So this insulin resistance leads to inflammation, and a vicious cycle can result with more inflammation causing more insulin resistance and vice versa. And this can eventually lead to something called metabolic syndrome, which is a precursor to type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So metabolic syndrome, what is it? Well, it's not actually a true disease, but it's a cluster of risk factors. And you can see those risk factors down at the bottom of this slide. It's a way for us to determine whether inflammation is occurring. And you might be familiar with these from blood tests that you've gotten from your doctor in the past. They're indicators of how your body is doing. They can indicate, such conditions as type 2 diabetes, as I mentioned, heart disease, and maybe even the propensity to stroke later on in life. So it's a kind of an advanced warning system for us. And unless a person that has these indicators makes significant changes in lifestyle, including the way they eat, they're at a great risk of developing these chronic diseases. The good news, though, is that if you can improve these factors by making changes in your diet. Now, before we go any further, I just wanted to talk a minute about different factors that can affect this metabolic syndrome and the inflammation in general. It's not just the foods that we eat that affects our health. It's what's going on all around us as well. Simple changes in lifestyle habits can have a big influence on how healthy we are and coming back from this metabolic syndrome and reverse its effects. So simply getting things, I say simply, sometimes it's not that simple, but they're obvious things to us. They're things that we've been told as we've been growing up. Get more exercise, exercise a little bit every day. It doesn't have to be, extreme, sports, just 30 to 60 minutes a day of aerobic exercise or weight training. can do it. Just commit yourself to moving more. Find out ways to get out, meet a friend for a walk, things like that. Controlling your stress level and weight is very important. Stress can contribute to weight gain and heart disease. And it's important to learn how to relax and manage stress to help you feel better. I talk with my clients often about ways of doing this, whether it is learning a simple meditation. It doesn't have to be elaborate or long. It can be as simple as taking deep breaths every now and then, just to slow down and be present. Sometimes adopting something like yoga can help as well. All things I'm sure you've heard about before. Nothing new to us, but it's good to hear why these things can help. And it's important to get regular physicals. See your doctor. Monitor your weight, your blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood glucose levels, so you know how those indicators are. Something as simple too as setting up a bedtime routine will help you get adequate sleep. So now that we know the dangers of overeating sugar, let's take a look at why we're eating this sugar. While our body craves sugar, we know our body craves sugar because it needs to survive, right? It gives us the energy. We've talked about that. But there are other factors that are influencing our food decisions, some of which may not be readily apparent to us. So in our highly industrialized society, sugar is available to us all year round. But this is not the natural way as humans we evolved. We naturally ate by the seasons. We typically only ate sweet foods found in nature at certain times of the year, usually in the spring. So now sweet foods, they can be shipped all around the world, so we can get it from anywhere, and we can get it almost all year round. With an abundant source of calories all the time, we don't need to store our calories for times of famine like our ancestors had to. But the reality is our brain hasn't evolved as fast as the food industry has. And it's still telling us to eat as much as possible to store up energy for when we're going to need it. In addition, we don't have to expend as much energy to get this food, right? We don't have to hunt or, gather to get our food. The farthest we're probably going is to the refrigerator. So we can't possibly be burning off all of the calories that are available to us. And in addition, let's look at the way the foods come to us. Fruit juices are a good example of this. The juice that's extracted from fruits actually is a simple carbohydrate. You would naturally get full and stop eating, about 1, maybe 2 apples if they're small. But that's because fresh fruit naturally fills us up. But when you consume 1 juice box, you're actually consuming the juice and sugars from 6 apples. That's a lot. We normally wouldn't be chewing that, right? The juice contains many more calories and sugar than the whole fruit it was made from. And it no longer has that fiber that would have filled us up and stabilize our blood sugar and keep us full for longer. It contributes to that roller coaster that's going on. So as I mentioned before, sugar is everywhere. It's estimated about 70% of the foods that we eat are processed. And of that 70%, 80% contain added sugars or high fructose corn syrup. You've probably heard of high fructose corn syrup before. It is a concentrated processed form of sugar that's added to prevent food spoilage and also greatly reduces the nutritional content of what you're eating while increasing calories. Not a great combination. So let's just take a look at some of them on this slide. I mean, things that you wouldn't really think have a lot of sugar in them, like ketchup and yogurt is added. Salad dressing is a big culprit in this. And then, of course, there's cough syrup, which is supposed to be making us healthier, but in the same process with all those sugars is having an opposite effect. So food manufacturers know our weakness for sugar and are taking full advantage of this by adding as much sugar as possible to excite our taste buds and our reward center of the brain. In fact, there's a crucial tipping point food companies look for when adding sugar to the food, and it's called the Bliss Point. I don't know if you ever heard of that before, but now you will never forget it. This Bliss Point is the precise amount of sugar that is needed that will give the consumer a sugar high without becoming sickeningly sweet. All perfectly manufactured to sell the product, but not looking out after our health. Companies are constantly marketing foods high in sugar, fat, and salt, making us want the foods they are selling. Think of that Bliss Point we just talked about. By eating these foods frequently, we're starting to crave them. Sugar has an addictive quality. As I said, it excites the pleasure center of the brain. And when that reward system fires, it reinforces the behavior, making it more likely for us to continue acting the same way and consuming more sugar. We feel we need sugar to be happy. So, with all of this marketing for us to eat more, it's not surprising that we consume as much sugar as we do, right? But let's not dwell on the negative. Let's look instead to some simple things that you can do right now to find out where added sugars might be hidden in your diet and how to reduce your sugar consumption. So, added sugars versus natural sugar. It's important to note that there's a difference between added sugar and natural sugar. I talked a little bit about it so far, but I think it bears just repeating one more time. Added sugar is removed from its original source and added to foods and drinks to serve as a sweetener or increase their shelf life, not to make it healthier for us. Added sugar is found mostly in processed foods and drinks. And be careful because table sugar is also processed sugar. So when you're adding that to your coffee, you're adding added sugars to your diet. And while many studies connect added sugars to inflammation, natural sugar has not been linked to it. So in fact, many foods containing natural sugars, such as fruits and vegetables, are anti-inflammatory in nature due to the phytonutrients they contain. Those phytonutrients are also known as antioxidants. So when we consume those antioxidants, remember I said that the body can get depleted with its own natural antioxidants. We're actually adding in more of those antioxidants to help neutralize the inflammation in our body. So these natural sugars now, they're acting very differently in the body, and the body is reacting to them very differently. So natural sugar is usually consumed in its whole form in the food, and it's eaten with other nutrients in that food, such as proteins and fibers that help slow down that absorption of the sugar. So we don't get that spike. We get that constant level of energy throughout the day. And one of the ways to avoid added sugars is to know what they are and how to identify them, right? Believe it or not, all of these names on this slide are sugar. It goes by many different names, depending on its source and how it's made. This can make it hard to really identify sugar, even when you read ingredient lists and food labels. So one thing you can do is check for the ending OSE, O-S-E. That's the chemical name for many sugars, such as you've probably heard of sucrose or glucose, lactose, maltose, dextrose. A lot of these come from different sources. Fructose comes from fruit, for example. Lactose comes from milk products, for example. But they are all they're all sugars. If you would like a copy of the list here, just email me or leave a message in the chat box, and I will send that off to you, because I think it's a good thing to know, and it's really surprising. So you can start now looking at nutrition labels to find sugars on the back of your foods, and you'd be surprised how many things contain sugar and how much sugar is in each one. We now have a new nutrition fact label, which is actually helping us identify added sugars. They actually separated out total sugars and added sugars. For instance, in this label, we can see that there are 10 grams of added sugars. That's about 2.5 teaspoons of added sugar, or almost half of the amount of sugar that's recommended for women to eat per day, according to the US government guidelines. If a product doesn't have a new label, it won't have this added sugar line separated out. And when this happens, you have to do even more detective work to find out where that sugar is coming from. When that happens, you need to go to the ingredient list. So typically, ingredients are listed in descending order by quantity. And if you see sugar listed among the first few ingredients, the product is likely to be high in added sugar. But beware, manufacturers can and do list different sugars separately. So if you notice in this example, there are a number of different sugars mentioned. I've circled them here. This is a trick that's used by manufacturers to hide just how much sugar has been added to foods. So sometimes, even if sugar isn't listed in the first 4 ingredients, it may appear several different times under different names. And now that you know all the different names of sugars, you'll be a better detective at doing this. One of our biggest contributors to added sugar in our diet is, not surprisingly, found in sodas, fruit juices, like I mentioned before, and sports and energy drinks. It's a good idea to eliminate as many of those as possible. Again, just empty calories. So what should we be drinking? We want to be drinking plenty of water, herbal tea, green tea. Green tea is actually very good. It has those antioxidants in them that I mentioned that helps neutralize that inflammatory response in the body, and other drinks that are low in calories. So hydration, it's the first rule of proper nutrition and good health. So we should look to increase the amount of water that we drink every day. So how we eat is almost as important, maybe just as important as what we eat. When we're calm and focusing on eating, I talk to my clients about this a lot, that when we're calm and eating, we're more likely to make healthy choices. One example of this is just slowing down and chewing your food. So many of us gulp down our meals without even giving our brain time to realize that our stomach is full. The rule of thumb is to take about 20 minutes for a meal, because that's about the amount of time that it takes for the brain to register that it is eating and full. A simple tool. There is, I talk to my clients about chewing a food 30 times. It's amazing how difficult it is to chew 30 times. And doing this, a lot of times you just get bored and realize I'm bored and full, which makes you eat less and makes you realize just how many times we don't think about our meals. Another way to reduce sugar cravings is to eat food that you like. When you reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, your taste buds change. You start tasting your food more, especially if you're chewing it, like I said. Your taste buds aren't overly stimulated by sugar, and you start to taste the natural sweetness and flavors of foods. This allows you to explore new foods and add in variety. The idea is to add in healthy foods that you enjoy so you're not hungry and tempted to reach for a quick fix with a processed food. If you're looking for suggestions, I've got that program coming up, and in it, Rethink What You Eat and Age Younger, you'll have meals and snacks to go to when these cravings hit. Just a little plug in the middle. And one way to keep your taste buds happy and lower sugar cravings is to add in more flavor. So spices and vegetables are particularly good at this. And of course, fruit. There are vegetables, though, that are naturally sweet, like sweet potatoes and carrots. And spices can actually enhance this sweet flavor. I actually have a recipe on my website, which is roasted parsnips with cinnamon. Oh my gosh, so good. It actually, to me, tastes like a snack, but it makes a great side dish for a meal as well. So if you're interested, look to to my website, eveyschweig.com, and look up under recipes for those roasted parsnips with cinnamon. It's delicious. So not only do spices also help fight inflammation, just like vegetables do with their antioxidants. So that's another good reason to be adding them into your food. Cinnamon in particular is a great antioxidant. And then, did you know that protein can help prevent sugar cravings? Because protein does not stimulate the release of insulin the way sugar does, it actually helps to stabilize that blood sugar level, and lean protein can help keep inflammation down as well. And let's not forget the importance of our snacks. They help keep sugar levels steady throughout the day, preventing us from becoming overly hungry and making poor food choices. I love having healthy options available for snacks all the time. My favorite is a mix of nuts and maybe some dried fruit and unsweetened coconut flakes. It sure beats the sugars that are found in those protein energy bars, and I love the flavor of it. And then finally, having fresh produce in the refrigerator helps putting a quick meal together very easily. So be prepared. I like to have a lot of vegetables in the refrigerator that last a long time so that I don't have to be constantly replenishing them. For instance, I always have carrots or sweet potatoes. I like to have celery and beets there as well, because they keep a long time and they're there when you need them. And planning meals out over the weekend and shopping for ingredients helps. And when your week gets busy, you'll have everything on hand. So many of you who have participated in my past food prep programs know how helpful this can be and how good it feels, both saving you time and because your sugar levels are staying constant throughout the week. So let me take a break and just see if I can answer any of the questions that you have asked. The question is, how does too much sugar relate to eczema or blood pressure? So again, it is an inflammatory response that's coming on. A lot of times inflammation exhibits itself on the skin. The skin is an organ, and inflammation affects every organ of the body. So I would say that it is an inflammatory response. Reducing sugars would help with that, as well as some of the lifestyle issues that I was talking about as well. And let's see if we have any other questions. Okay, very good. So let me now move on to, hopefully by this point, hopefully by this point, you've come to understand just how important it is to limit the amount of added sugars and refined carbohydrates in your diet, right? But maybe you don't know exactly how to go about doing that. So luckily, that is my superpower. I can help you get back on track and just in time for the new year. So my new cooking program, which I've mentioned a couple times now, Rethink What You Eat and Age Younger, is designed to do just that. Add in natural sweetness and eliminate those inflammatory foods that are causing our symptoms. You'll be eating delicious, easy to make meals that are low in added sugar and big on flavor. And the program starts on Sunday afternoon, January 23rd. So we have some time before it begins and after the holidays, which is a good thing. And it includes everything that you're going to need to eat healthy for a week. So let me just, if I can, tell you a little bit about what is in the program. So when you sign up, you will receive your cookbook. It's an e-cookbook with recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks for the entire week for 2 people. There's a written introduction in the book that adds in some additional shopping and cooking tips as well as some of the guidelines as to why I've included some of these recipes in the program. And each recipe includes a beautiful photo of the meal, plus tips and notes for making substitutions or additions. And this is just one example of one of the recipes that is included there. And the recipes, of course, include whole food ingredients, no processed foods, or added sugars. You'll also receive a suggested meal plan for the week, listing all the recipes. I also include a link for a blank planner so that if you would like to shuffle these and have them at different times of the week, you can do that. The plan is more about adding in these healthy foods than the exact order in which they are arranged. I've just done this because it makes it easy to have them during the week in this order. But if the whim hits you and you want to eat something from the end of the week at the beginning of the week, that's fine too. It's up to you. It also comes with a comprehensive shopping list with all the ingredients you'll need for quick, painless shopping at the grocery store. The ingredients are actually ordered according to where you might find them in the store. So for instance, all the vegetables are listed here in one place. It makes it quick and painless, easy in, easy out for when you're shopping. Another thing to reduce that stress level, which will help reduce the inflammation that's going on. You'll also get a follow-along prep guide with using to use while we're cooking on Sunday. So I will be cooking with you on a Zoom call on Sunday, and we will be following the directions. It's just a sample here, and prepping all of the foods that we will need for the rest of the week. When we're done, you will have either the food prepped or ready to go and ready to store in storage containers for the week. And there'll be 3 Zoom group calls. I found that having the group get together and get to know each other actually helps increase, just the fun of doing it. And questions come up that one person might ask that's helpful for another. So I have a introductory call that is on the Wednesday evening beforehand on January 19th. Before the Sunday afternoon program where we actually cook. And in that introductory call, I will just go through all the steps of the program, everything that you'll need to know, answer any questions that you have as well. And then following up after Sunday, I have another Wednesday call where we just check in and talk about how things are going, what foods you liked, whether I can help you with anything, and answer, again, any questions that you might have. And of course, you get support from me via Zoom and email throughout the program. And I'm happy to do that. And just here's the marketing part of it. The price is $69. And there are 3 ways to join if you'd like to do so. You can sign up by using this link. I don't know that whether this link is clickable on the webinar. I thought I would just throw it in there just in case. You can take a screenshot of it if you'd like to do it later. But I will also be sending a follow-up email, and I will include that link as well. I've also included a QR code that will help you. You can just take a photo of that with your camera, and that will show up and give you the information on how to sign up. Or you can always just email me and let me know that you're interested, and I can send you the link. Might be the easiest way to go about doing that. Okay, so that comes to the end of my program. And let me just look to see whether I've answered questions. So Ellen had asked me about how much bread is 50 grams. I will look into that to be sure. I think it is 2 slices, but just to be sure, I will check. And would switching to whole grain bread make much of a difference? Great question. Whole grain bread, it depends. It depends what you mean by whole grain bread. A lot of whole grain breads are made with white flour, to which they've added back in the bran and the other nutrients. It's not the same as whole grain because of the way the flour has been processed and broken down. If you think of flour and how powdery it is, it actually liberates, and the starch then is exposed to digestion very easily. And the same thing happens even if the whole grain bread has had some things added back. So my answer to that is, if it is a hearty bread that's very sturdy, you know the ingredients that are in it, then yes, I would say it's probably better than white bread. But if it's a mushy whole wheat bread, chances are pretty good you're still going to get that sugar response, that same spike in your sugar, blood sugar levels that you would with white bread. So I would stick to the breads that we don't like, that as kids we didn't like to eat because they were so hard. Those are the breads that are actually best for us. And if you can actually see the pieces of grain in the inside of the slice, that's better for you. So really good question. Thank you for doing that. And let's see. Does plain Greek yogurt contain sugar? Great question. Plain Greek yogurt does contain sugars. Remember, I mentioned that there were OS names for sugars. It contains lactose. So what's nice about yogurt, though, is that the organisms, the microbes that are giving the yogurt that tangy taste, are actually pre-digesting that sugar for you. So a lot of the sugar, a lot of that lactose gets digested before you're consuming it. So you really, there's less sugars, let's put it this way, there's less sugars in a plain yogurt than in the equal amount of milk because of that. But be careful. You want to make sure it really is plain yogurt and not a yogurt that has added, even if it says fruit added, check and see. Chances are pretty good that they've added in additional sugars, because that's what we're used to and that's what the consumer's buying. You're much better off buying that Greek yogurt, adding in some fresh fruit and stirring it in, maybe adding in some nuts with that add fiber and healthy omega-3 fatty acids to it, and enjoying it that way, and getting used to having less of that sugary sweetness and more of the natural flavors. All right, so I hope that I answered all of your questions. If not, please feel free to email me and let me know. I'm happy to answer. any questions that you might have. And I will send out that sugar chart. It looks like a lot of you would like to have that sugar chart sent out to you. So I'd be happy to do that as well with the follow-up. If there's no other questions, I think we're done with the webinar for today. We have one more question. Okay. Why is sugar added to things that are already sweet? Great question. The reason that sugar is added is because microbes cannot live in a highly concentrated sugar environment, which is why honey, for example, stays fresh and does not get contaminated because it has such a high concentration of sugar in it. So manufacturers like to add that to their product to keep it fresher longer. The other thing too is that sugar is addictive, and manufacturers know that. And remember that bliss point. The bliss point is that perfect combination of sweetness, but not too sweet, so that it keeps us coming back for more. It activates that opiate center of the brain that keeps us wanting more, that bliss point. Exactly. So very good. So hopefully that answered your questions. And I look forward to seeing you in the program that's coming up. And if you have any other questions, as I said, just give me a call or send me an email. All right. Well, good night. Thanks for showing up tonight. I appreciated all your wonderful questions and look forward to seeing you in the future. Take care now. Bye-bye.